Hello, everybody. I'm Brad Parkinson. This is Planet Health Radio. I'm here today with Shannon Burford from Cura Integrative Medicine. We're going to talk a little bit about foods, what are the best foods to eat, and where does organic foods fit into that picture. How are you going, Shannon?
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me today. I'm so excited to talk with you, as always. I really love your work, Brad. You're so educated and you're really always diving down that rabbit hole to know more and everything about health you want to know. You're hungry for it.
Well, thanks, Shannon. And likewise, you've always been a leader in the field for me, and it's always someone to look up to. And you're my trial and error man. You tend to go and do things first, and then I can learn from that and perhaps take a different way sometimes. But most of the time, I follow in your footsteps. So if I've got to thank someone for my greatness, it's you.
All right. So let's talk about organic food.
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, organic foods, is we want to get to, I guess it's sort of sparked up a bit of interest in the media with the recent study that came out on the 6 families and how they did decrease the amount of organophosphates in their urine dramatically just by being offered over a few days or a week or so. So we can get an instant result with that. But look, let's start off talking about some basics with food in general, and I was thinking of starting off with some macros and micronutrients. We hear a lot about high protein versus low carb. Originally, for years or for decades, it's been low fat diets, and that's been promoted heavily. And now we're seeing a lot of the keto diet and everything. Perhaps not used correctly, the keto diet in many cases, and different versions of that probably aren't so healthy. But then people coming to me, many of my patients that go high fat, and they actually reduce their levels of cholesterol, triglycerides, and get some really good benefits from having maybe not necessarily high fat, but increasing fats in the diet. So, perhaps what's your take on macronutrients, and where do you see it? How do you find it in clinic, and how do you deal with people coming in on a high protein or low carb or high fat, low fat diet?
Of course, everyone has the best intentions, and then they go off, and there's often a new piece of research or a new even fad, and it's easy for everyone to jump on and try it out. But it always comes back to what we do is individualized medicine, and it definitely is never a one size fits all. And the keto is a classic where it has potential to benefit, but it also has potential not. And if even just going on purely my experience, I became quite angry and checking my liver enzymes were going up, and it was stressing my liver quite a lot.
Wow.
But maybe a modified keto, or is a modified keto a paleo, or is a paleo, or can you do a plant-based paleo? Or there's so many little tweaks and changes.
Yeah.
But definitely keeping those key macros is essential. We don't want to go to a fructarian diet or a fruitarian or a water fast for months and months, but keeping a level of the macros equal is really essential. And then those subtle tweaks, whether it's lift up the fats or lift down the proteins.
Yeah.
I also do the epigenetics testing, and definitely some people are more geared for a Mediterranean with more polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Okay.
Whereas other people may push their cholesterol up. So then going back to eating lots of nuts and seeds, but possibly that could be raising your cholesterol too.
Right. Now it's very individual, isn't it? And we do have now the many types of LDL that we can test for as well, which I offer in my clinic, and I'm sure you do, where if we feel like there's high LDL levels in patients that it may be genetic that their cholesterol is high, it may be something that we need to explore further, because we do a lot. They eat a very healthy diet, they have a very healthy lifestyle, but yet that LDL still seems to stick up a little bit high. And then we can now we've got the ability to investigate that a little bit further, and then break those LDLs down and see if there's actually smaller VLDLs or other types of LDL that's going to be more detrimental to the health. Because in some cases, a lot of people can manage quite well with moderate to higher cholesterol levels, if they're more prone to having those higher readings, and usually with a bit of case taking, you explore that my whole family's had that, always had high cholesterol, always had. So it's always worth exploring that a little bit further, and that's where I think it's very important that we need to test and take thorough case histories, and not just give them, well, in our case it's herbal medicines and dietary interventions and nutrition. But in the case of GPs, they're just handing out statins, which is one of the most commonly used drugs. So I think it's important to really hone in on that individuality when it comes, especially coming to fats and high cholesterol. Yeah, what about high protein diets or low carbs? What's your experience and views on those?
Yeah, I just go back to balance. If someone is coming in and they're eating, and diet, even though it is the foundation of everything, and we want to go back to diet and healthy eating, but usually a patient is coming not for their diet, it's more of a symptom of their diet. So you can usually see someone who has a lot of skin issues and they're coming, and then you digging deep, and they have started a gym program, and they've always eaten a lot of protein, but then they've recently just up their protein and they're eating red meat 3 times a meal, 3 meals a day, and they're just the vegetable intake is extremely minimal. Yeah. So it's really clear your skin condition is a result of your diet and your level of possible toxicity and load on the system.
And look, you touched on a couple of points there that I'll just elaborate on too. Is I guess what we haven't mentioned is the type of macros you're having too. Like people will worry about counting calories and if they have too much protein, too much carbs, or this, that. But I mean, something like a piece of red meat, the quality of that can vary substantially. I mean, if we've got grass-fed red meat, we've got nice amounts of omega-3 to omega-6 ratio there. Otherwise, if you're just eating your standard red meats, your ratio goes from 2-to-1 to 20-to-1 omega-6, and then all of a sudden you've got this high inflammatory food. And I think this is very important too. And that's where I see a lot of my patients don't understand this, that it's the quality of the foods you're having too, not just looking simply at macros and what have you. And you touched on fruit and veg too. I mean, no matter what diet we look at, and we'll talk a bit about diets in a minute, but fruit and veg are always very important, and the quality of that fruit and veg, wanting the colors of the rainbow, and that's where we get a lot of our micronutrients from, all the minerals and vitamins and all these cofactors to drive our pathways. So if you can have all the protein in the world, but if you're not getting a lot of these micronutrients from your fruit and veg, the antioxidants, the polyphenols, all these things, you're not going to utilize the protein properly anyway. So very important point too. Types of diets, there's so many that are in fad or in vogue and popular, and then one moment it's let's eat raw, let's go and let's be vegan diet's the best, and then paleo just took over, and everything's paleo or ancestral and what have you. And I was in a great debate back in school where we split up the class into 2 groups, and one was paleo and one was vegan, and you had to argue your point. And I was on I actually, at the time, I was sort of in and out of vegan You know, I'd quite often be vegan for like a 2 to 3 week period or something. I think it was more that I was poverty struck and couldn't. No, but I actually like the cleanliness of the vegan diet. I think there can be some benefits. But I was arguing for the paleo side, so that was always an interesting process. But there's quite a few diets that we should maybe talk about. Paleo, vegan, pescatarian's always been a favourite of mine. And, of course, the Mediterranean diet, which I believe won some award this year. Came on top of all the other diets around. And then quite a lot of people, if they get picky, they'll say, well, a true Mediterranean diet is not that. And but as we know, the Mediterranean diet, again, heaps of fruit and veg, colours of the rainbow with your fruit and veg, some good healthy oils in there. It's a very good diet for many reasons, and a varied diet. And it's usually accompanied with healthy eating. So people, you know, with family and friends, and people are relaxed when they're eating and enjoying the moment and really appreciating that special time of the day. Yeah, and there was one thing that's come up a bit. There's people doing a carnivore diet, which it sounds crazy, but they're just on meats. Again, I'd like to explore that a little bit more and see what's going on there. But some people have sworn by it, but certainly something I wouldn't advise anyone to go out and do straight away. But yeah, what's your take on some of these diets, and do you have any favourite components to them, or you know, do you find that like fruit and veg, for example, is always going to be a prominent feature of all these diets, and except for carnivore, of course. You know, what's your experience with patients coming in saying, hey, I'm pescatarian, or hey, I'm a vegan, and what have you?
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I wanted to write a handout for patients on that, and I Googled diets, and there were over 100 diets. It was a catalogued list, alphabetical list of diets. And it just got me thinking that there is never going to be a one diet. And so I created my own, a Cura diet, medicine. And really, it's just healthy eating at the end of the day. And no matter who you are or what you need, it would just take a tweak. Maybe it is dairy-free for you, taking that out, or maybe it is increasing the vegetable content, or maybe it is just tweaking and reducing the amount of animal proteins. Yep. But I feel that as long as the foundation is solid and whole and as organic as possible, and rich with that colour, as you said, and rich with variety as well, then you're not wrong. My wife loves macro eating, and she often comments about I eat too many nuts.
All right.
And, my niece is a vegan, and my brother is quite carnivorous. He loves his barbecue. Yep. But they're all doing okay for them, and they've probably found that it sits well with them, and as long as they're feeling in a healthy zone, then it's okay.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's a really individual thing, and depends on what the individual is doing. I mean, you've got athletes versus someone who's got a condition. You know, it's going to be completely different dietary requirements, and you really do have to sit down with them and go through it and look at what they need. And you know, I'm often handing out food lists of things for specific nutrients, because you can see that they're void of those nutrients, and sometimes we can get away with doing that instead of supplementing. Because I mean, as much as we need to use supplements at different times, it's always good to send someone away with dietary changes that sort of you're always trying to bring the patient back to the diet anyway. So regardless of what supplements and herbs you're giving them, you're always trying to work on underneath those prescriptions. You're working on the dietary changes and lifestyle changes, so they always come back to that. Okay, well, look, we mentioned organic foods, and I think we both come from a background where we feel that they are important, and clean eating is very important. And with the recent study done on these families showing the benefits of eating organic, or as far as not having the organophosphates or different pesticides or what have you in your system, I think it shows that you can turn your diet around reasonably quickly. But what are the negatives in your from your take, from if people aren't eating organic, what potential harm are they doing themselves, or what sort of consequences are there going to be from not eating organic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So many levels, and you could go into the spiritual side as well, like the energetics of the food and the vitality. But purely on a physical level, all the micronutrients and trace elements is the number one I see. But it annoys me there have been various studies over the years, and they will make a statement that there are no differences between organic food and non-organic food. But you look at the study, and they're only looking at the macronutrients and very basic factors in the food. And you think, well, hold on, look at even the microbes. Look at the microbes. And
that's a very good point.
Yeah. And, there's nothing like if you're able to grow your own and pick that fresh produce, 99.99% of people will say that it's just so delicious and fresh and vibrant, and it just makes you feel so good when you eat it. But of course, the chemical load and that particular study on the organic food and the pesticides and the clearance, even that, there are more. What about potential radiation, or what about heavy metals? And they just looked at one particular marker in there of pesticides, but all those other things that they're not testing for, we can't clear those out as fast.
Yep.
But that did show that organic food was better, and ideally, if you can eat organic food, it shouldn't be unfortunately a question of cost, which is quite tragic. That it should be organic, and then possibly paying more for treated food. That would be a better situation. But unfortunately, in this crazy world, we have to pay more for organic food. And the biggest patients will say, "Oh, but Shannon, the cost of it." But there's some way to minimise wastage or grow your own, or at least a percentage. It's that step in the right direction.
Yeah. No, look, it is you bring up the cost is usually the first thing they say. However, if you look at what people are spending their money on, we get a $50 box delivered, but it works at $55 after GST, and it's a nice full box for two of us, and and we can even say, we can have a bit of this or a bit of that and change it, or we've got too many potatoes this week. And look, it's the best $50 spending, because you're getting clean foods. You can, whether you're making a soup from it or what have you, and it makes you go, okay, that's you look at food as medicine. You go, that's my medicine this week. I've got to consume that. And if I can consume all that, my partner and I, look, where I'm going to, get some benefits. And it's a good way to monitor, how well you are eating too, because quite often if there's a little bit left over or a lot left over, you go, okay, well, how come I didn't hit those greens? What's happened? And, I've been too busy or what have you. So it's a good way I find for me to gauge how well I am actually eating. What I usually say to my patients is if you can't eat all organic, that's off the table, try and aim for a few things, and you might have a few different ones that you stress, but I stress that they try and eat their greens, berries, and apples. And mainly for those three things, I find are really good cleansing foods and have really healthy healthy impact on our digestive function and numerous functions. Where really, when you're talking about greens, and you're getting your magnesium, your calcium, a bit of iron, and then you've K2, and also, many other things. And I like to look at those foods as cleansing. So if you're getting them and they've been sprayed badly, and apples here in Australia are really badly sprayed, and then these, for lack of a better word, bastardized big things, and they usually upset people's guts. And it's a classic one when people come in, fructose intolerant, or got FODMAPs, or can't eat that apples. And I often find that if they switch from this big whatever it is with really thin skin, and they go back, they switch to an organic one, which is quite often smaller but with a thicker skin, full of polyphenols, really good fiber. They don't bloat on it. They get some. They can eat numerous of those apples, organic apples, and they're fine. So I think for me, they're three critical fruits and veg that I stress if you're going to get them, because if you don't get them organic, they're really bad ones that are sprayed very badly. So if they can make that switch, I try and get them to at least do that. Is there any ones you like to add to that, or do you tell your patients?
The same, and above ground and below ground, but above ground preferably spray.
Yeah, yep. So, well, there you have it, folks. It's been great to talk with you, Shannon, and it's of a very important topic, and we could go on for hours talking about food, that's for sure, and the pros, cons of different diets. That's an endless discussion, that is. So, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed that little chat, and thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Brad. It's a pleasure.
And we'll speak again soon, and that's it from us. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.